At this point, you should have found and downloaded at least 2 GeoTIFFs, which happen to be USGS topographic maps, and at least 1 digital elevation model. Now, in this example, I want to show you the correct way or the proper way to mosaic digital elevation models. So you may only need 1 for the assignment, but I recommend downloading 2 so you do know how to do this. And the files I found were in this .d2t file extension, but they are DEMs. DEMs for some reason just come in a few different flavors of extensions, but I do know these work, and if you followed along the previous video, you'll know how to find those. So let's go ahead and go to Photoshop. And what I'll first look at is the digital elevation models. I'll just go ahead and highlight one, hit open, and a little bit of review here. When you first open a DEM, it gives you a schema to choose from. Now this is the range. DEMs always include a range of gray, from pure black to pure white and everything in between. Now one option is just auto stretched, where it takes the lowest point in that DEM, gives it black, takes the highest point and gives it white. I'm looking at this little graphic here. Now that's good for just pure representation, but because we're going to mosaic these together, the highest high and the lowest low are going to be different between these 2 DEMs, and they very most likely will be different. You can choose either world, a whole bunch of different options here, just North America, but you want to be careful with those, because if, for example, we were trying to import something from North Dakota and we're looking at this very gargantuan world range, and that's probably the bottom of the ocean and the top of whatever Kilimanjaro, the range is such a small set of those they wouldn't even show up, so just be aware of that. Now I've got a few custom ones here, and just from previous exercises. Let me get rid of those, and you can do that just by hitting the minus, because you may not have those. So what we need to do is create a custom schema that has the highest high and the lowest low between these 2 maps, or whatever number of DEMs you want to mosaic together. Easiest way to do that, there's a few ways, but this one is pretty painless. I'll make a new schema, and when you click this, it analyzes your map and tells you the lowest point and the highest point. And what you want to do is just go ahead and get to this step and write down these values, which I'm doing right now, and hit cancel and cancel. The reason is because we need to try to open the other one before we know what the highs and lows are. So just like before, I'll create a new schema, and I can see this one is 1692 and 3517. So this file has a higher high elevation, the other one has a lower low, and what I'll do is just hit 1484. Now that's the point from the previous one. Now by doing this, I'm making sure that the entire range is included, and a certain level of gray on one map will represent the exact same elevation as the same color in the other map. And if I wanted to be a little bit extra careful, I could move those a little bit further on either side, say 1400 and 3600, but this works fine for now. I'll give this a name that makes sense, and let's call this looks good. And then I'll go ahead and hit OK. It applies that range and gives me this DEM. Now all I need to do is go back to that first one and apply that same schema. There we go. So notice on both of these, this is always good to be checking on. It found a reference file and it found a coordinate system. If that ever says specify, you need to go way back to the download phase and either try a different format or make sure you've got the reference file with it. But if you've been following along, you should see something that looks similar to that. The next step is to mosaic these, which is this button right here. And sometimes you may see the incompatible DEM schema. You'll see that if they're not the same gradient range, which we just fixed, or if you're trying to import a DEM into something like a digital raster graphic. We'll come back to that in a moment. But because these are the exact same schema, I can add one to the other, click OK, and you can see here what it's done is just position that on top of the other. It's a very smooth and seamless connection between the two, which is exactly what we want. This one we don't need anymore. I'll go ahead and close it. And just a little bit of cleaning up on this guy. We can flatten the image, so I'll just right click on either one of those layers and select flatten image. You know, let me move this up so you can see that. Always, again, keep an eye on this, because if that changes at any time, that means there is a problem. Next step is to convert this to a GeoTIFF. It's a georeference file. It's just not a GeoTIFF. So on, whoops, wrong window. This was the one I want. Hit the flyout menu, go to convert to GeoTIFF, and just save it somewhere that makes sense. I'll put mine on the desktop and click save. So I'll keep this open for now because there's a little bug that you should be aware of. But the next thing I want to do is open one of those TIFF files. So GeoTIFFs, any georeferenced raster image has to have this little bit of information that tells Geographic Imager where this exists on a ellipsoid. And it can either be in an accompanying file or it can be embedded. If you ever have the option, such as I got here, choose the embedded choice. And I'll show you why. If I hit OK, very important to always keep an eye on this. I can see that I've got a reference file, which I just selected, and I have a coordinate system, which is also very important. Let me open up that other one. And this time, I'll just say, fine, it has a reference file, it must be good, so let's go OK. But big red flag, it doesn't have a coordinate system. And that can give you all kinds of headaches. So with these particular files, and it seems to be kind of a common thing, you want to open, and if you have the option, select the embedded reference file. Now, if it wasn't embedded, you wouldn't even have that option. Geographic Imager is just saying, hey, I've got two choices. Which one do you want? So with that open, I can see they're the exact same, which is perfect. Now, some of you may have received an extra little prompt saying something about the color mode. What that is basically saying is you got to change these from index color to RGB. Index color is a very packaged system, and it's usually set at the last step, where if you want your file to say only include the colors that are used on this image, do this, and it ignores the rest of the gamut, the RGB color gamut. And it also makes them impossible to mosaic, as you can see, because the mosaic button is grayed out. So what we need to do here is change these both to RGB color. This will make your file size go up substantially as well. Now I can mosaic those together. And here's where I wanted to show you the little bug with this Los Alamos DEM, or I'm sorry, DEM that we've converted into a TIFF. All right, so back, clicking on one of these guys, hit the mosaic. I can add the other guy by doing that. But this one is saying incompatible DEM schema, but that doesn't make any sense because it's not even a DEM anymore. Just ignore that, and I'll show you how to fix it. Because all we want to do now is merge those two. Hit OK, and as with the DEM, it puts those in the same file. So let's close this one. To fix this, you can just close it. You know, and just to be doubly safe here, I'm going to resave it. I'll replace the other one. Sometimes it loses the reference information if you don't do this. Compression is fine. The rest of this setting is fine. And now I can close that file. Open it right back up. For some reason that will flush out that incompatible DEM schema bug. So now if I come back here, I should be able to mosaic it. There it is. I don't have the error. But you don't want to do it yet. There's a few more things we want to take care of. So let me hit cancel. We're not quite done cleaning up this. With the DEM, we could just flatten the layers, but there's a small issue here. Because these two files each have a border as a part of the actual graphic, part of the map is getting covered up. So if I turn on and off this mosaiced one, I can see that this whole top border here is covering up some important stuff below. They still line up perfectly, but we just need to clean that up. And it's as simple as deleting the part we don't want. So what I like to do is zoom in here really close, and you can see this black edge where the map actually ends. I want to crop out just a hair, like literally a pixel below that. So what I'll do is grab my polygon lasso tool, not the normal one, but the polygon one, because you can click to define the area, and just click. Well, let's start up here first. So I just click once to start this rubber banding selection. I'll click right at the bottom of that, and just leisurely move to the other side of the map. All right, and I clicked once to set the first point. I will click again to set the second one, and I can zoom out. Now I've got my scroll wheel set to zoom. You might need to hold down Control or Alt to give it a shot to zoom out. And I've just created this polygon selection area. I can highlight that layer and just hit delete on my keyboard. And very nicely, it has merged those, or seamlessly aligned those, I should say. There's a lot of extra stuff here, and actually you don't even want it, because the whole purpose of this is just to align these align these geotiffs to get a seamless area. And I was interested in was this community of Los Alamos. So because it's geo-referenced correctly, as I can see here, I can do the whole bunch of Photoshop tools to manipulate this, and it's non-destructive. I don't lose any of that referencing. So all I'll do is just crop out kind of this area that I'd like to look at with the crop tool. And now I can merge these two files. So I'll right click, merge visible. There we go. Got myself a very nice borderless digital raster graphic to work with. It's probably a good time to save this. So let's do a save as, TIFF. I'll also put that on the desktop. And once again, you can leave that on none, or LZW is pretty reasonable compression. So there we go. I've successfully mosaicked two separate file types and converted them into very useful geotiffs. In the next video, I will show you how you can combine these to create a much more visually informative map that kind of uses the best features of both.